But if we look at purely the energy consumption, then if Ethereum were to migrate, they could save 99.95% of their entire energy consumption.
Hi, and welcome to the Financial Fox, Investing and Innovation Ideas with a Twist. I'm your host, Steffy B, and in this episode, I will be joined by Alex De Vries, data scientist and founder of Digiconomist, a platform that is dedicated to exposing the unintended consequences of digital trends, typically from an economic perspective. So there is a lot to cover here. I want to talk about the challenges that cryptocurrency are posing to the current establishment in terms of energy generation. So we are going to talk about proof of work versus proof of stake, Bitcoin. We are going to talk about the real impact actually that these crypto transactions are having. So it's going to be a very interesting conversation, and we have a session about NFTs and fashion as well. So stay tuned, and if you think that I haven't covered something that is important, then get in touch with me at steffy@financialfox.news.
I would say that people shouldn't be discouraged about very high carbon footprints associated with NFT, because if it's not solved yet, it will be solved pretty soon.
But before we go into the episode, I want to talk to you about my new crypto web domain name, financialfox.crypto, which I got it from Unstoppable Domains, that is creating a new generation of web domains, which are actually domain names on a blockchain that you buy once, and you don't have to worry about renewable fees anymore, because they are your forever. They are decentralized, so no one can hack them. And also because they are effectively domain NFTs, that you can trade them if you identify, a domain name that you think in the future you can resell it for more money, because, the decentralized web is going to take over the internet. And the cool things, which I really like, is that they make crypto payments so easy, because you add your wallet to your web crypto domain address, and voila, when you need to get paid, you just give your domain name and the money come directly into your wallet. So if you're interested, go to Unstoppable Domain using the link in the description, which is going to help also support our channel. And if you want to help a bit more because you like the content that we are doing, then make a donation in Ethereum, Bitcoin, or USDC to financialfox.crypto. Hi, Alex, how are you?
Doing very well, thank you.
Great. So very excited to talk to you. We are going to unlock the myth and facts of energy consumption for technology. And let's start with crypto. Is Bitcoin consuming too much energy to be sustainable?
Yes, so I think to answer this question, we first have to look into a bit of the basics, and or at least trying to keep things as simple as possible, but to at least understand why Bitcoin consumes so much energy. Because ultimately this system is built on a technology that is known as proof of work mining, and that's where the energy consumption is. It's a technical term. Well, what does it really mean? Well, in essence, Bitcoin is money. It's peer-to-peer money. It's money where no government or authority is in charge. And it's an open network where anyone can join in maintaining the system. And anyone can help in creating new blocks of transactions for the underlying Bitcoin blockchain technology. Bitcoin has a limit in the sense that there will never be more than 21 million coins, and over time they are provided as an incentive to anyone that participates in this process of maintaining the system, processing new transactions, except that it's not an easy process. You can't just make a new block for the blockchain and get the reward. It's not an easy task. It's actually made purposely very difficult to do so. And that's where mining comes in. So in order to make these new blocks for the Bitcoin blockchain, people have to run their computer hardware to participate in what is kind of a game of guess the number. And only if you guess correctly, then you get to create the next block block for the Bitcoin blockchain. And now the energy consumption is where these machines, and there's millions of machines around the world, about 3 million devices all around the world are making these gases, and they're making more than 140 quintillion gases every second of the day non-stop. That's where the energy consumption is, to produce all those gases. So in the case of Bitcoin, we're talking about as much electrical energy as a country like Argentina is consuming. And then, of course, you also have Ethereum, the second largest cryptocurrency of the moment, which is doing about half of that number. So together, they are now, all those machines running in the background are consuming as much electrical energy as all data centers in the world combined.
Right, that seems scary, but then basically what we said is that energy consumption is a feature, not a bug, of the way the cryptocurrency, specifically proof of work, works, actually.
Yes, it's a feature in the sense that it provides security.
Exactly, exactly.
If you want to attack this network and somehow, if you want to manipulate it, you need to somehow get a majority of all this computational power in the network, which means that you also have to spend more on resources than everyone currently in the network. So it's making it expensive to attack the network. That's the function of it.
Yeah, but in a way, if we are comparing that, and this is something that I think, people have always to bear in mind, is that if we are comparing the current banking and financial system, I mean, there are a lot of resources used there, a lot of energy that is consumed, not by a blockchain, but, by anything that makes all the system work. I mean, that is probably bigger environmental impact than cryptocurrency.
It's hard to say, and also because in the case of Bitcoin, we look specifically at the mining. So let's say Bitcoin's data centers, and there's also an ecosystem built around Bitcoin where you have people with for example, crypto exchanges and other parties involved that have offices and have people. But if you look only at the data centers, which is the mining, then those miners are consuming more or as much energy as all of the world's data centers combined. So in a sense, it may be somewhat comparable to each other, at least if we look at it on a purely data center level, because in the end, the data centers that support traditional finance are among all those other data centers as well. Of course, the real difference, and it's hard to compare these currencies with anything, because we can, of course, look at the banking system. But the banking system does not allow you to do NFTs, which we will get to.
Exactly. Well, we are going to talk a bit later. So now there aren't just currency on proof of work. We have got, for instance, Cardano, that is proof of stake. Ethereum is moving to proof of stake. So let's talk a bit about proof of stake, energy consumption there, and some comparison with proof of work, how much energy is saved.
Yes. So proof of work coins need a lot of energy. They're very energy hungry, but you don't necessarily need to have a cryptocurrency running on this proof of work mining. There's alternatives like you mentioned, Cardano. There's others that are running something known as proof of stake. And actually Ethereum is working on implementing proof of stake, replacing their proof of work algorithm. And if they were to succeed, it changes something really important, which is that in proof of stake, you don't need highly specialized energy consuming hardware, because you still have that sort of lottery process going on in the background for people to be selected to create new blocks in the blockchain. But in proof of work systems, your chance of winning then depends on how much computational power you have, and the more machines you have, the bigger your chance of winning. In proof of stake based system, it's all based on wealth, like how much, for example, if Ether moves to proof of stake, how much Ether do you have? And then you're going to stake that. And the only thing you need for that is a computer with an internet connection. It's a completely different system. which also has a different security profile. We should know that it's not just about the energy consumption, but if we look at purely the energy consumption, then if Ethereum were to migrate, they could save 99.95% of their entire energy consumption. So if they eliminate the guess the number game, they won't need energy consuming machines to do that anymore. Then you get rid of most of the energy consumption, and then almost nothing's left. So you can do this on cryptocurrencies. Many are already doing it, and Ethereum is planning to do it. So in that sense, it's good news for anyone that's at least involved in anything. Well, most of platforms nowadays, they build on top of Ethereum. So at least for those people, it's good news that Ethereum is planning to make this change. But for now, it's still running on the same as Bitcoin.
And it is a good news for all the crypto ecosystem, because that's basically the solution to minimize carbon footprint.
Yes. Yeah. Well, like I said, if you get rid of 99.95% of the energy consumption, you also get rid of the
quite compelling.
Yes, and also you don't have the electronic waste associated, because of course those specialized machines, they cannot be repurposed. The ones that you use for Bitcoin mining, you won't need. You have proof of stake based systems. You just need a computer, and that's it. You can use it for anything else. You can use your phone. You can use another machine. It doesn't matter.
Okay, so let's now just, because we clarified that, which was quite important for everybody to have a little bit of context, we are going to deep dive into the world of NFTs, which have been making headlines. There was, a big hype earlier on this year, now it's come back, and, NFTs are making the headlines basically every day.
Yes.
And it's not just about, NFTs is cool, it's a trend, it's just cool now. It is really a fundamental change in the sense of digital ownership and also use case of utilities of NFTs. And I would like to talk about fashion. I'm a fashionista. I'm a proponent of technology integration in fashion. And I think the future of fashion is really into the metaverse and unlocking the value of NFTs. So I want to have, a conversation with you about that, just to kind of take some facts, some data, and also take down some myth as well on, the concept of digital fashion and NFTs. So now we are running on Ethereum. Most of the projects out there, they are running on Ethereum, which is proof of work. So that is not good for what we discussed earlier on. So when there are projects, they are saying, or there are technology crypto proponents say, oh, well, actually going into NFTs, you are gonna have a more sustainable business, and you are gonna save energy, you are gonna consume less CO2 and stuff like that. Is that true?
Well, when you look at digital fashion, I think the core idea there is that, you have now an Instagram generation where people take a picture of themselves, they want to look nice, they put it on Instagram, and then whatever they are wearing, they never wear it again. So, it's a one-time only outfit, which does have quite a footprint to produce. Like just a simple T-shirt can have a carbon footprint of 10 kilograms, depending on the material used. So if you're just going to use that item once, make a nice picture, put it on Instagram, and you're done with it, that is a bit of a waste. So what I think digital fashion is trying to achieve is that, in the end, we still need clothes on our body every day, but it's for this specific situation where people, want to maybe show off. They can have, their picture sent to the people that generate this digital fashion. And well, what happens is they get a digital dress or some other piece of clothing Photoshop on top of it, and they can put that on their Instagram, and then there's there's no need to buy a real piece of clothing for that. And of course, if you do it, then the carbon footprint of that is going to be extremely low. It's just a digital dress. Of course, you need to run a computer to make it, but it's going to be very minimal compared to, you know, making an actual dress from real materials. So in that sense, it could contribute to reducing the overall footprint of the clothing industry, which is massive, by the way. Clothing is definitely responsible for a gigantic carbon footprint.
Exactly. And I think it's not something that is talked about a lot, because the movement of fast fashion is creating an amount of production that was immense. It was huge. And as you said, it was not really used. It was not really worn enough. And fashion, and there was this bad or dark side of fashion that it wasn't a real fashion. It was like more like industrial production or something just to use once. I mean, it's kind of like, I'm not really a big fan of Primark. I think, you know, having clothes, they're just going to be worn once, and then the quality is not able to sustain 2 washes. So that's kind of like, it's really bad.
Yes, well, just to compare, the Bitcoin and Ethereum combined may be responsible for 0.5% of our global emissions, but the clothing industry is responsible for probably up to 10% of global emissions. So a gigantic proportion of our total carbon footprint is ultimately related to clothing. And then it's really amazing to have people think about ways to, you know, do something else than fast fashion, try to make it digital, have people wear outfits longer, and if they need something special, we're going to give them a digital product instead, which has a much lower footprint. So the idea is really nice. But then, of course, and by the way, for this idea, you don't necessarily need to launch an NFT. It's something you can sell on a website and people will Photoshop it on top of you, but you can also monetize it better if you make an NFT for it.
Exactly. Well, I think where the NFT comes very useful is to verify the ownership, because one of the problems, especially for big brands, is definitely verification, authentication of the brand. There is no counterfeit. So, which there are quite a few of these, companies and people creating something that is not real and then reselling, pretending that it was the one. So I think this is where NFT comes in and brings a really big value. Obviously, just wear it for probably a picture or maybe to hang out in the metaverse. It's not really, the point of like authenticity is not the main one, but so currently the current footprint of an NFT, do you have any data on that?
Yes, we can estimate that, and with NFTs it's always a bit tricky because in contrary to a real piece of clothing, the footprint of an NFT doesn't really stop in the sense that it will continue to exist on the blockchain and people can trade it on the blockchain, sell it again in the future. So it's never really finished, whereas a real piece of clothing, you wear it and then once you're done with it, you discard it and may get a new life. But there are different profiles, but let's do something very big, because I made a comparison between, I did a calculation for a very basic NFT digital dress a while back. And the thing is that just putting something on the blockchain, just putting a dress or any piece of clothing on top of the blockchain a while ago had a carbon footprint of more than 200 grams of carbon. And why is that so high? Because the carbon footprint, we determined that based off the proportional share of that NFT on top of the system that it is built. So if you put your NFT on top of Ethereum has a large footprint, then we take the share of the activity that your NFT accounts for as the carbon footprint of that NFT. And that can be massive. That's why, these numbers can get really big, because ultimately the amount of activity on these networks is limited. and the Ethereum network doesn't really scale well. So if you put something on there, it's usually relatively big compared to everything that's going on. And yeah, then it can get a carbon footprint of, well, several hundreds of kilograms. So the dress I examined was, the head had a few bits. It was sold once, but I think if you added all the activity together, it had a carbon footprint of around 600 kilograms of carbon for now. In the future, people can maybe sell it again, and then it would run up. But that is 60 times more than a real T-shirt. So it's not that the actual item had a digital dress is so carbon intensive to make, but it's the fact that it's running on a proof of work based system that makes it so carbon intensive. And that's the thing people often miss.
And so if you move to a proof of stake, let's say the same NFT minting is done on Cardano, it will be 99% less.
Yes. In Cardano, you don't have this issue at all. Then you actually save in terms of carbon footprint, you can just reduce it by 99.95%. Cardano is also a lot smaller, by the way, than Ethereum. So less nodes. You would have to do the calculation specifically for Cardano. So I'm assuming it's even higher than 99.95%.
Wow. Okay. Right. So basically, the opportunity to make something that isn't so energy intensive is possible, and is great. I'm actually thinking, one of the other things that are quite important for when it comes to fashion is, when you have a T-shirt, then you have to, nobody wants the T-shirt anymore. And even let's say that you resell the T-shirt, you get to a point where all these garments, they have to be disposed of, right? Yes. And I think this kind of space that is occupied by landfill and, the actual items, they are not used anymore, they are waste. That's a big problem that actually cryptocurrency and digital fashion can solve.
Yes, yeah, indeed. You have, when we talk about the carbon footprint of clothing, you don't have it. We are just talking about a carbon footprint, and there is a waste element as well. So yes. it's not just the carbon footprint. I also read that the clothing industry is responsible for nearly 20% of wastewater.
Exactly, because it's not just creating it. Yes. Then when it gets to the end, you can send it to in Indonesia or India and get other people to use it, but at some point you get to you just is not wearable anymore.
Yes, exactly, and those are all things that you can actually address with digital fashion. And I do think there is a limit to the extent that people will still want to have some clothes on their body during the day, but they might be able to, if you have a digital item, if you want to look nice on your pictures, then you don't have to dress up for that anymore.
Exactly, and coming back to the waste, I mean, nowadays, obviously, technology has improved a lot, where you can actually make clothes using recycled material, and that is something great, but it's still going to consume a lot of energy as well.
Yes. So, of course, yeah, it's never really free to make anything, and of course, if you want to be really specific, if you want to completely calculate the footprint of a digital dress, you also need to consider how long is the person taking on a computer to actually generate the whole thing, and is there any travel involved? Well, probably not, because it can be done on a computer, it can be done remotely, but still, even if you included running a regular computer, which is not a Bitcoin miner consuming a whole lot of energy for limited amounts of time, then that footprint will also always be a lot smaller than what it's really simple. You only need to create a digital product.
Exactly. And one of the things that I'm really convinced is that our future is going to be the metaverse. And that's where the opportunity for fashion brand is, in a way, with the new generation that likes to hang out in places like, Sandbox, the Centraland, and, other metaverses, Sansa, for example, and many others, maybe Facebook that is coming very soon. So I think this is where, we can maybe have a specific digital collection that express our personality, it gives to us a different kind of opportunity to utilize fashion in a more creative way as well, rather than just doing in the physical world where there are more limitations, definitely.
Yes, and I would recommend that people that want to get into this, you should be aware, like if you want to make an NFT, if you're going to do that on Ethereum, it's going to have a very high carbon footprint, but you should not let that stop you from getting involved into this. Well, first of all, Ethereum is moving to proof of stake. Yeah. Secondly, you already have proof of stake based alternatives. So if you really want, you can already maybe try using an alternative, or just wait several more months until Ethereum launches their proof of stake, and then the problem is also solved. They're the biggest platform for this kind of stuff. But I would say that people shouldn't be discouraged about very high carbon footprints associated with NFT, because if it's not solved yet, it will be solved pretty soon.
Very soon, exactly. The computer at the beginning, they were massive, and now they are just microscopic. I mean, they're just very, very small. So if you have a message to tell brands about getting into digital fashion, what would you say?
Well, I think it's definitely something that is worth exploring, because I had, as mentioned before, the carbon footprint of the clothing industry is massive. If we can probably not reduce the entire footprint to zero with just digital fashion, but anything helps. If you read the latest IPCC report, they put together a new report on climate change, and they said every ton of CO2 matters. If from that perspective, anything we can do to reduce our total footprint in some way, if that's with digital fashion, then that's something worth exploring. And of course, we need to make sure that we do it in the right way and don't accidentally make it bigger. But I think there's an opportunity here as well to, at least have a positive contribution to the environment.
Exactly. Make something for the world. Many brands, they have the slogan, save the planet and stuff like that, be more sustainable. And definitely technology has got something to offer. So Alex, a bit about what you do. You run Digiconomist, which go deeper into this issue about, environmental impact of technology, and obviously payments are a big part of that as well. What got you into this project?
Well, I started researching this back in 2015, and the reason I started was because I read an article myself, which was on Motherboard, and the article was titled, I think, Bitcoin Isn't Sustainable, and the article said a single Bitcoin transaction has the same energy footprint as a average US household for 1.5 days. And I thought, when I read that for the first time, like, okay, that's a massive number for a single transaction. If you take a regular transaction in the traditional financial system, we're talking not, if you would make the same comparison, we would be talking seconds rather than 1.5 days. And it made me wonder, okay, where can I find more information on this? Because I wanted to know more. And then I couldn't find any. So I looked around and I noticed that some people did some work on it, but most people were just not paying attention to this. And even worse is that if you are a user of this system, so for example, you're a Bitcoin user, then you never get to see those statistics, because you're not the one that's paying for electricity. It's always the ones that are doing the whole mining process in the background that are the ones paying for the electricity, and they get subsidized by the software. They get a fixed reward for what they're doing. But if you're a user, you just don't see it. So I thought, like, okay, you know what? I'm going to launch first of all, the Bitcoin energy consumption index, and later the Ethereum energy consumption index, to provide a level of transparency to, how much energy is going around in the system, especially as the value of these systems goes up, because ultimately, these miners are paid in the native currency of their blockchain. So if you're mining Bitcoin, you get paid in Bitcoin. Very simple. But if the price of Bitcoin goes up, it means that your income goes up. But that also leads to miners spending more on resources. They will acquire more hardware, they will consume more energy. And especially this year, the price of both Ethereum and Bitcoin has hit a record high. So these miners are making more money than ever, but now they're also spending more on resources than ever before. And again, the whole purpose of my energy index is to make that transparent, to allow people to see the trends and, just be aware that this is going on, and, maybe, well, they can do whatever they want based on that information. Hey, if you can think like, okay, I'm going to use a more energy efficient system, but it can also be a motivation. Hey, in Ethereum, especially, the developers previously referred to my work, and they were like, yeah, well, if this is going to be our legacy, we're not going to be happy. So that's why they're also working hard to turn the system to proof of stake. So in that sense, it's also a motivation to do something about it.
Tell me a bit about the tools you use. How do you calculate these, energy consumption data?
Yes, well, there's multiple ways to do it. And, I have a methodology, and the alternative is provided by Cambridge. They nowadays also have a Bitcoin energy consumption index, not Ethereum. But, in the end, we are taking public information. It depends on which source you're using. I'm looking at what is being earned by these miners, how much are they spending on electricity, and how much electricity does that translate to. In the case of Cambridge, they're looking at how much computational power is in the network, and then, they guess what is going to be the average efficiency of the machines in the network, and they make a calculation based on that. And if you put the two next to each other, sometimes there will be differences, but on the whole, they have the same trend, and they are pretty much in the same order of magnitude in terms of impact. So it doesn't really, it matters, but it doesn't matter that much. There is no such thing as a perfect estimate. So in both cases, they're estimates. But of course, we also have a way to determine a minimum number. Like in the end, people have there's a limit to the efficiency in the network, in the sense that there is a certain type of machine out there that is simply the best at doing the mining. And even if we assume that everyone is using that system, that will give us a certain minimum footprint for Ethereum and Bitcoin mining, and that's also featured on my blog. So if you look on the Bitcoin energy consumption index, you will see two lines. The first is one that I just described, and the other one is a minimum number, which is probably a third of the former number, which represents the absolute minimum. And of course, people have to realize it's not realistic to just look at the minimum, but in the end, I think this indicates that we have a pretty good idea about where the energy consumption of this network really is. And I think the real discussion nowadays is, where is that energy consumption being sourced from? What is generating that energy? That is a very hot debate, and it's complicated because we cannot see who is participating in this network. Cambridge found a way to visualize it. They asked mining pools where people join their computational power, like, can you share your data with us? Can you share the IP addresses of your miners? And some pools did that, but only a third of the network. And based on that, Cambridge made a mining map that showed that, up until recently, a majority of this network was located in China, but that's already outdated information because China just banned all cryptocurrency mining, and now we don't really know at the moment.
Well, but this is one of the things after the shutdown of mining in China is that, other mining operations in the West particularly are using renewable energy. Is that fair to say that using solar and other renewable energy, you can basically create a more healthy crypto mining ecosystem?
Well, the thing that's the problem with renewables is that they're intermittent energy sources to some extent. And if you want to run your miners on solar energy, for example, you need to shut down your machines for half the day, unless you're using very expensive batteries. But in a lot of cases, that's just not going to be worth it, and it's just going to be more profitable to run your machines on an energy source that is constantly available and cheap. The people often misunderstand that miners don't just look for cheap energy. Of course, renewable energy can be cheap, but it has a bit of a consistency issue, especially solar energy. During the day, it fluctuates a lot, but also hydropower that these miners used a lot in China fluctuates seasonally. There's a lot of it during the rain season, but very little in the dry season. So it's complicated to really make this work with renewables. But of course, if miners are, for example, in Texas, then they are connected to the regular grid. And on the regular grid, you always have a mix of energy. So there is a big part of the energy in Texas is natural gas, but of course they also have wind energy and solar energy on top of that. So of course there is renewables in this energy mix, and we have to see. It's probably too early to tell where all these miners have ended up, because we still see that the network hash rate is recovering. It's not at the level where it was before China banned Bitcoin mining, but once it has completely recovered, we can look at this network again and see how the distribution has changed and what that then means in terms of fossil fuels or renewables. But it's kind of too early to make a definite statement on that.
Do you think that companies, businesses should actually incorporate data about their carbon footprint as something, as part of their transparency policy?
We do see that happening already, even in the Bitcoin space. Gemini, one of the larger Bitcoin exchanges, recently launched Gemini Green, where they try to offset the carbon footprint of what they're doing. So that first of all means that they have to measure their carbon footprint. And then they decided to try and offset that. And carbon offsets means you are buying some product, for example, saving a rainforest somewhere in the world that ultimately helps capturing carbon emissions. It depends, of course, on what kind of project you pick. But the whole purpose of carbon offsetting is to, invest your money into something that neutralizes the carbon footprint of your activities. So I think that is a development that shows that even in the Bitcoin ecosystem, people are becoming aware about this. They're upping their disclosure and they're trying to actively do something about it. So yeah, this is definitely a very recent trend that we have seen in the past months.
Okay, well, I think it's something that going forward will become more and more important, valuable for all the planet. So it might be something that actually businesses have to, rather they can do, to show off, their effort. Well, listen, it was great to chat with you and to kind of discuss this very important issue, particularly for the NFT and digital fashion, which, are important points to clarify, because everybody, is jumping into the NFT, craze. And those are things that are very important, particularly for fashion brands to reflect on. So yes. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your views.
Very welcome.
Okay, we arrive at the end of the interview. If you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel, click the subscribe button and follow us on social media to stay up to date with our news and interviews. And if you find our content interesting, then add also a comment below. That will be great. And if you want to get in touch with me, please do via Twitter or send me an email at steffi@financialfox.news. I'll see you next time.